My topic today makes me feel disgusted as a black person in Africa. And it is really about the African story being told by somebody else, not by us as Africans. It's always the mainstream media, it's always BBC, it's always CNBC, it's always First Post, it's always Indians, it's always Americans, it's always the Europeans, it's always the British, not us as Africans telling our own story. Our own story makes sense if it's told by us because it's us who have lived the story, not somebody else who's overseas who is being told or is who have had who have maybe one or two correspondents in such a country, and then they just understand what they understand and push a certain narrative and certain agenda. That's why our African story is poorly told. Not that we give a fuck what they think about Africa, but just for the sake of all the lies and the propagandas that is always circulating all over the world. Even us as other Africans, we end up consuming that same content because us as black people as well, when we want to know about anything or what's happening in Congo, what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in Somalia, what's happening in Burkina Faso, we tend to those media houses, the mainstream media, and they what they do is sell us a propaganda, tell us lies and lies and lies and lies, which will end us believing in those lies and even hating each other, not loving each other, not understanding each other, not appreciating other countries. We think, oh, okay, Burkina Faso has just coups and coups and coups after coups, and there's a military junta leading there, but they never bother to try and understand why what is happening is happening. They just push an agenda because it serves the West, serves Europe, it serves France. So that's the agenda and the narrative that those media houses are going to push. The mainstream media is going to push to us. But us as Africans, we need to tell our own stories, our own way. I want to hear the story of Congo from a Congolese person who have grown up in Kivu. I hope this is the person who's going to tell me about the M23, their own experience, not somebody who is in India, not somebody who is in Europe telling me that M23 is Rwanda and this and that. That's a bullshit story. I want to hear from somebody who is in Congo, who is a Congolese, who grew up in the region, who understand these people, who have lived through the experience. There are other experiences that when I hear or when I'm watching on BBC, on CNBC, some of these things that I have lived myself, who can give a better testament to what has happened than them just painting a picture that does not exist in Africa. And us as Africans, we need to start taking the responsibility to share our own stories, especially amongst each other. That's the most important thing, that between ourselves as African countries, we must understand each other. Like Rwanda, DRC Congo, South Africa, and the South African media just keeps on singing the same messages that is coming from the West, but never tries to go on the ground in Congo to try and understand what is going on in the Congo. Who is who? How did these people live together before? How did this come to be? To the point that an ordinary person like Rutendo Matinyarare takes an effort to go and meet the M23 themselves. I don't understand why on this continent we never had anybody else who tries to make this effort. Before you report, before you talk all this, you jump into conclusions and say these are rebels, these are funded by Rwanda. Have you ever tried to go on the ground, speak to them and understand? They are welcoming to speak to anybody, but you never try to go there. And I also just hope, if the people, us ourselves as Africans, we need to take responsibility. Think about it. It took Rutendo to go in Goma and start taking videos and say, look, yeah, we understand this is happening, but it's not exactly as being reported on the mainstream media. Life is actually sort of normal here. The M23 is actually well received by the people, but that's not the mainstream media is telling us. The mainstream media is just telling us these are some certain rebel groups and animals and this and that. They're killing people left, right, and center, which are obviously lies and misrepresentation of the facts. And I wonder, I also wish to see more of that, especially from the people who are in on the ground, the people themselves who are living it and experiencing it. Because even Rutendo himself, as an outsider approaching this area, he could not, he might misunderstand certain things that the people who are in the situation would understand better. And some of it, us as black people, we are the virus. We are the cause of all these things because you know what? We do not believe in ourselves. We always look down upon each other. If I'm trying to create content and trying to give my experience of the African story, you prefer listening to BBC. I understand there are challenges of the English language is not our main language. It's not our mother language. Some people are not well articulate and are not well spoken. But at the end of the day, we should promote each other. We should support each other. We actually put ourselves down and we put more of our views towards the European and the Western mainstream medias. And we are very, very quick to believe and accept these as the standard, as the golden standard of giving us information in our own continent instead of getting information from the people themselves. We are on the ground, who are living the life, who are experiencing it. That's why Africa is painted as such a horrible and terrible continent full of poverty, full of hunger, people dying of diseases, and then this and that, uneducated people, uncivilized people, because our story is being told by other people. You know, so many people, when they come to Africa from other continents, they are shocked that this is not the Africa we've been shown by the Western media, because us as Africans, we're not putting effort to tell our own story our own way. It takes someone from overseas to come and tell us a story about Lesotho. It takes someone from overseas to come and tell us the beauty of Lesotho. But there's nobody in Lesotho who is trying to tell their own story. It's actually very rich if that story is told by someone who have lived it and who have experienced it, who is there in Lesotho. I don't know what is wrong with us as black people. And the media, the Western media, is a tool that the West uses to manipulate and control the world and sell propaganda. Whenever they're planning to invade, whenever they want to put sanctions, whenever they want to overthrow a government, that's what they use to manipulate facts and lie about our leadership. They have said so much bad things about our own heroes to the point that we actually believe it ourselves. They've spoken so badly about Muammar Gaddafi. They've spoken so badly about Robert Mugabe. They are painting the same picture with Ramaphosa. They do this in order to manipulate us. And us as Africans, it's our duty to protect our own heroes and tell our own story, our own way, so that our own people as Africans are also not brainwashed into believing these lies that the Western media purports to everyone. So if we leave them to do whatever they want without us offering an alternative, then the world and then us as Africans are left with no choice than to listen to them because there's no a viable alternative. But it's us, our duty to debunk those lies and give an alternative which tells the truth. The real conversation should be heard between us as the youth of Africa. We need to start having podcasts across countries, for those who are in the West and those who are in the South, those who are in the Central. We ought to start having conversations so that we can understand each other. I mean, I was impressed by the gentleman from long form. I think he is a Rwandese. I mean, he spoke at length and with Rutendo, made me understand certain things that I didn't understand about Rwanda. And also, he was also surprised about certain things that he also hears from the media from the Southern Africa, that how do we believe such things about Rwanda? So we need to bridge those gaps and start having conversations with each other across, so that we can build a movement as the youths of today, so that we can start developing each other until we can also hold our leaders accountable and create a great revolution that is going to change Africa.